Beautiful. All right, well, let's start. Let's start. Okay, so hi and welcome to this expert series in the Raising Body Confident Kids online course. Today we have Nicole Cruz all the way from Southern California. Welcome, Nicole. We are here. Nicole, if you don't know Nicole, she's a registered dietitian nutritionist. She specializes in eating disorders and working with families. And she has a beautiful, where I found her actually, a beautiful Facebook group called Joyful Eating with Your Family or For Your Family.
For
I
your
should know that.
family.
For Your Family.
Okay.
Joyful Eating for Your Family. And we are here today primarily talking about sugar because it's such a hot topic for almost all parents I've ever met. Actually, everyone seems to have an opinion about it. But before we get right into the nitty gritty of sugar, I want to start by asking you the question we ask everyone who in this expert series. Can you please, Nicole, describe for us a family meal when you were growing up? So who was there, what you ate, just paint that picture for us.
Absolutely. Um, yeah, so I had kind of dual experiences, I suppose, depending on the season that we were in. I actually have like a lovely, supportive, very intact family. I'm still very close to, I have a brother and a sister. I'm the oldest of three, and my parents. And they've been married for over 40 years now, and I grew up having family dinners all the time. So we were expected to be there for family dinners. We all ate together at the kitchen table. There was no media, no nothing. We sat and we talked, and my mom was a stay-at-home mom, so she was always cooking, and she just still she loves to cook. I love to cook. It's something just we love doing it. So she would always cook family meals, and we were all there and expected to be together. And I say it was different because there were times when it was tuna noodle casserole and salad and some other, vegetable and fruit salad, and we would all sit and eat it together. And then, depending on what season it was in, if my mom was in her, she knows I talk about this, her dieting days, mom would be maybe having cabbage soup or grapefruit or a bowl of Special K, while everyone else had whatever the family meal was. So I saw both of these perspectives of her going on and off diets, yet at the same time, we all always sat and ate together and
Beautiful.
enjoyed our meals. So there was that piece, that duality of, okay, not the best role modeling in some instances with the food, but also at the same time, it was a loving and supportive environment always. So,
Beautiful. Beautiful. And did you, at what age did you realize that the dieting was different to what you were doing? And was there a conversation about it, or was it just something mum did? And how did that play out?
it's super interesting, I think, because my brother and sister and I all, we were raised really normally in terms of the food that we were fed, normally in terms of like, I think, a healthy relationship with food. We were given all foods. That was absolutely fine. We didn't talk about good or bad food or healthy or unhealthy. It wasn't talked about, but my mom did this thing over here that was dieting. And so the weird thing is, maybe it's not that weird, to me it is a little, but I thought it was just normal, like what
Mm,
women do. Like
mm,
I don't know, I didn't think much more other than that this was just a normal experience, that that's what moms or women do.
mm,
And it wasn't until I want to say maybe 9 or 10 or so, I really started to notice there were a couple of close family friends and neighbors that I spent a decent amount of time with. And I noticed they didn't do that. Like, I would go to one of my best friend's house, and her mom's would make fried tacos. And that was like, frying a taco shell did not happen in my house. It wasn't talked about badly, but it didn't happen. It was like,
yeah. Yeah, gotcha.
yeah.
Yeah.
And her mom would eat that instead of eating something different. And I just thought that was a little bit strange. I started to notice that. I started to notice there was like real cream in the fridge and just these little subtleties that I started to notice were different. And it's interesting to me when I think back about it in the way that I actually took that in, but I took that
Mm,
in as something like I needed to do that my family did. Like our family needed to do this thing. My mom needed to do that, and I would need to do that someday. And then
interesting.
other people were like lucky. Like they didn't have to worry about their body. They had different genetics or whatever. So,
Yes. So, and then how did that sense of, I love how you describe that, you know, like it wasn't about health, it wasn't about size, it was just about they're kind of lucky. And
yeah.
I love how you describe that. And then how did that start to play out for your relationship with yourself?
Yeah. I, again, I think I had a really normal, like I said, relationship with food. I would notice subtle body differences at times between myself or my friends. I had a couple of friends that were really tall and I was always shorter and, maybe had a little more weight on my body than they did, but I was always considered a normal straight size kid. It was not of concern or anything for anyone. Not that it ever should be, but just even
In your
societally,
world, yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah, yeah, yeah.
it was fine. And so, but I kind of noticed those differences. But again, I didn't think much of it or that I would do it. It was just kind of like, oh, again, those people are kind of lucky. They're taller, thinner, whatever. And I have this really clear memory, though, of one day. And again, I was probably around the same age. I was probably 10 or something. I was sitting there with my mom, and I still don't even remember what I said, but I made some sort of comment. And she looked at me and said, oh, because you have my thighs, honey. And I was like, oh, okay. I have my mom's thighs, which I wouldn't have thought anything of her thighs, except for I always saw her measuring them with her tape measure. I saw her
Oh,
doing the thigh master. I saw her dieting and trying to shrink her body. So I did take that on, but I was also involved in a lot of sports and athletics. And I think I just saw my body as strength still. And I just took part in that and I used my legs and I thought, in some way they're powerful. And it wasn't until late high school that I really started to become uncomfortable in my body. And I think it started to change. I started to gain even a little bit more weight. And that's when I thought, I know what to do. You
and
got it.
all that
It was
training, right?
all of it. Yep. It was
Just
like,
comes in.
yeah, it didn't affect me really young. I have a couple of little
Wow.
seeds planted, but nothing else. And then it wasn't until then that it really took off for me. And I started trying to change my body actively, and it just latched on. And I ended up with, a diagnosable eating disorder and having to go through treatment and everything to really heal my relationship with food.
Yeah. And then first of all, I'm so sorry that happened to you. I, as in, I'm so sorry it happens in our culture. It's just, but this is why we're here doing what we're doing, right? Because we have these experiences,
Mhm.
and we don't want the next generation to have these
Absolutely.
experiences. So, how did that then go from you've got an eating disorder, you're clearly found found recovery, and then now you're in the world of supporting people who have eating disorders. So, how did that play out?
Transpire there, yeah.
Yeah.
I started going through treatment and everything, and once I really committed, I was just really committed to my recovery. I have clients a lot that ask me about that. I'm like, I feel like it just, for me, once I really decided, like, I don't want to do this anymore, I was
Yeah.
really committed. And so I did whatever I was told to
Yeah.
do. I
Yeah.
ate the food, I struggled through it, but I was like, I
Yes.
want this. And I had a couple of good role models in my life that had dealt with eating disorders as well. And I was like, I want what they have now. Like I saw them living their life more
Awesome that you
fully,
had
and
that. Yeah.
I did. So I feel very fortunate with the way my whole situation kind of worked out.
Yes. Yes.
Um, so it was just through that I had dropped out of college to get support for my eating disorder,
Yeah.
and I kind of just started reevaluating everything. I don't know what I'm even doing in this major. I don't know what I'm doing at the school. I don't know what I want to do. And so I was very science minded. I was there as a neuroscience major, not, but I didn't know what I wanted to do with that. I was just like, I
Yeah.
find it
Yeah.
interesting. I like science and I like the brain and whatever. But I was like, I don't know what I'm doing on this path. So I reevaluated everything. And through doing the work I was doing, um, and with my dietitians and everything, I just decided like I really like science, and so nutrition feels like a good field in that sense.
Yes.
And I really want to be able to apply it more and help people more. Whereas when I think of the other sciences, not that you can't in other ways, but I always just was like, I don't want to end up in a lab. I don't really want hours like a doctor and that sort of lifestyle. I just kept thinking, I don't know what I want. And so it just seemed like a really natural thing of, okay, I'm really interested in this subject and the psychology of it, and I get to help people in this way too. And so that's how it
Beautiful.
kind of played out, yeah, with the disordered eating. And then I have 3 kids of my own now, and that's I from early on I started doing some family feeding work just as part of my job, but it was this really minimal piece as opposed to the disordered eating
Yep.
piece.
Yep.
And as I had my own kids and started being surrounded by other parents and seeing them really struggle, and well-meaning, even close friends of mine that don't even really have, disordered relationships with food, were still struggling so much to know what to feed their kids, how to feed their kids, worried about certain foods. And it was just through my experience of being around more parents in the same season of life that I realized, okay, like we need a lot more support in this area. It is what I see as kind of both parts is helping make food more fun again, bring the joy back, have less stress for parents, and to prevent disordered eating as much as we are capable. If we can help lay a different foundation instead of mimicking what the rest of the world is telling our kids, if we can kind of lay that different foundation and at least mirror something different to them, then at least we're doing something to help prevent disordered eating, even though it's not entirely in our control, and we can't guarantee our children won't, go down that path. So
it's that experience of having had an eating disorder and then having your own children and realizing there's this whole history that kind of comes with being a parent as well as comes with having disordered eating, and seeing and going, oh my goodness, I need to do something quite different here if I don't want them just to follow on that trajectory. It's very humbling, isn't it? That's the best way I can describe it for myself. Is it's very humbling, and it's intense. It's like, I remember the first time my daughter said to me, Mum, I hate my fat legs. And she was like 5 years old, and it was at that moment I was really like, hang on, back up the bus. This, I had already come a huge way in my recovery, but I realized it was this whole nother world that I needed to understand if that was going to make a difference to the next generation. So very, very humbling. And I love what you say about, the people around you. It's almost, my experience is that almost everyone I meet, almost every parent, regardless of background, with their own body, has some kind of radar going about what our kids eat, how big they are, and opinions about how we manage that. And the overwhelming, and you might have a very different experience here, but the overwhelming idea, it seems, from parents is that as long as you feed them lots of veggies and they get lots of exercise, we're all good. Like when I tell people what I do, I say I run an online course raising body confident kids. They're like, oh, my kids are great at the dinner table. And I'm like, that's great. It's so like there's one tiny piece of it. But anyway.
absolutely.
Yeah, it's really cool. So in terms of, I really want to talk about sugar today, as we said, and I'd love to get your expert opinion as a dietitian, as a mum, as someone who's recovered from an eating disorder. Let's start with the science, because I think there's a lot of misunderstanding about how addictive it is, or that bit. And then what I'd love to do from there is talk about how we as parents need to manage that with our kids and at different ages and stages. Like, I'm aware it's quite different handling what we do with sugar with a toddler as what we do with a tween or teen. But let's start with the sciencey bit. I mean, we don't need a whole full, but just
science lesson.
if you can dispel some of the myths and create a kind of a picture for us about, you know, the what would be important for us to know as parents would be fantastic.
Yeah. I can give a little bit of info, but please like interject or let me know if there are specific questions.
Okay.
Like you said, it's such a big realm there with the
Yeah,
science
yeah,
of
yeah,
sugar,
yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
I think one of the things that's just kind of a basic understanding that's really important is that glucose is a molecule and it's a simple sugar, but it's the same molecule no matter what food it's found in.
Mm.
And there are different forms of sugar, but all of them get broken down into glucose in our body to be used for energy. And that doesn't, and I'm not saying that all food is equivalent and that candy has the same nutrients as an apple just because they
No,
both have sugar, right?
no, no,
Like,
no, 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 no,
not at all.
no, no.
But
But what you are
there's,
saying, sorry, but what
go
you are
ahead.
saying is if you found a molecule of glucose in the bloodstream and someone has eaten an apple and a candy bar, there's no way of telling whether that molecule of glucose came from the candy bar or the apple, right? Yeah, cool.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So our body knows how to break down these molecules, turn them into the energy that we need, which is glucose, and then get it into our cells, which we use as energy. So
Yeah,
glucose is the body's primary form of energy. Our brain needs it the
yeah.
most to be able to think clearly and concentrate,
Mm.
etc. So when people talk about it being addictive, I think one of the things that we just have to keep in mind on this primal level is that it's a molecule, it's the same molecule, right? And our body has been using it since before time to
Right.
be energy for us, right? To be able to function. So,
And it's necessary, right? It's actually
yes,
necessary for human life to have glucose, and we can't therefore be addicted to something that is
right. That keeps
required.
us alive.
It's
Yep,
like being addicted to oxygen or
yep.
water. It's like, well, on one level, I guess you could argue we are, but that's a good thing.
Well, and that's the thing about the addictive part, right? That's very interesting that people try to use to say that it's this addictive substance because it lights up neural pathways similar to some drugs when
Mm,
we consume sugar. But like you just said, all pleasurable things,
mm,
including food, because food keeps us alive, lights up that neural pathway. So just because something is pleasurable doesn't make it addictive. And that's important because this is true also if you are holding your baby
mm.
or when you're first falling in love or lust with someone. Those neural
Same neural
pathways light
pathway.
up.
Yeah,
Yes. Right?
beautiful.
Petting a little puppy, all of
Yeah,
these
yeah,
things
yeah, yeah.
do. So we have to keep in mind that pleasure does evoke that same neural pathway, it makes it light up, but that doesn't mean that it's automatically addictive. And food is supposed to be pleasurable so that we seek it out to keep us alive
Yes,
physiologically, right?
yes. So what? Someone watching this going, yeah, I kind of get that, but my kids just they act addicted to it.
Right.
What's that? Can you speak to that?
Yeah, well, I think a big part of that is the meaning that we've attached to it and the
Mm,
way that we treat it as opposed to it being actually addictive. So,
gotcha.
if we're keeping it as like this special treat and we're always talking about it as it's so special or you're not allowed to have it, right?
Mm,
That's what they're going to be acting like when they do see it. And there's a bunch of other reasons and we could talk about those too, but I think just on this basic level, it's understanding that, my phone here, if I tell my kids they can't have it, they're going to be going crazy trying to get it because it feels like
mm,
something they can't have. And they want mom's phone that feels special
mm,
as opposed to some other toy. Or I joke with my clients sometimes, like if I laid silly brick in the middle of the room and was told my 3-year-old, like, don't go near the brick. You can't touch it. Like, why is that brick so special? I want to jump on that brick. Just that one brick. I want that one because you just told me not to, right?
Yeah.
Like,
And if we got, I so love this. And then if we develop that narrative a little bit further and went, that brick is bad, or your other toys are good, that brick is bad, don't go near it. It's addictive. It's rubbish. That brick is rubbish. Don't. All the others are good. It just fuels that conversation. So it's almost. Are you saying it's almost part of a conversation we have, as much as a reality that we're dealing with? Does that make sense to you?
yeah, I think it's the way that we talk about it. It's the language we use around it. It's the
Mm,
practical ways that we serve it or we don't serve it and we
mm,
restrict it. It's all
mm.
of these things. And then recognizing that sugar does taste good, right?
Oh
It
yeah,
does taste good. And so there's this practical piece too that
yeah,
people enjoy it. And it's normal for kids or all of us to enjoy it. And if we didn't make that be a bad thing that we enjoyed it and we
yeah,
just let it be what it is, it wouldn't build up this extra intensive energy around it.
yeah. It's. I love that you say that. I know in my own experience, one of the very important aspects of my own recovery, and this actually happened after I had kids, even though, as I said, I'd come quite a long way, was the making that absolute fundamental piece, as in world peace, not the jigsaw piece, um, peace with sugar, and allowing myself to eat it whenever I wanted. And that took some time. It took some time to create new neural pathways. But I could see very quickly with myself, as soon as I took away the you shouldn't eat it, it's bad for you. Was in the world of, I somehow have this unfortunate physiology where I just need sugar in the way that other people don't. And as soon as I took the brakes off, it was very quickly that it just became something I enjoyed along with everything else. And there was no, and you can see that happen with kids too. As soon as it's just part of the mix of all the other things, you take away that intensity about
Yeah.
it. Can we talk now about different ages and stages with this? So when we one of the things that I hear from people, there's a misunderstanding, I think, is, when you say just make it part of they're like, oh, if I just let my kids eat, if I'm not giving my 2-year-old a bowl of candy, you know. So how do we manage that at the different ages and stages, starting really young, like when are you of the opinion that start offering them high sugar foods right from the get-go? Is there an age that it's appropriate, that it's inappropriate? How do we manage that?
Yeah. So I don't think that we want to necessarily just, bombard our children with a ton of sugar all the time.
Yeah.
And especially when they're younger, they're learning to like new foods. And it is great to serve them a variety. And they have little tiny bellies when they're 1 year old. And we're not like, okay, let's just feed them a bunch of sugar and then they don't take in anything else. And so
Yeah.
I think this is dependent on multiple factors, though.
Yep.
So there's one piece of it. I tell you, in my experience, when I had my first, he's 8 now. So when I had my first, I had done so much work on myself. But like you, when it comes to the kids, it's like you start hearing all these other things though. But if I do feed them sugar, are they going to develop that taste for it? And they really won't like the other foods, like, all this stuff out there. And so I was a little bit nervous about
Sure.
introducing sugar to my kids.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
I remember the specific thing though was I was looking for, and my son he's grown out of it all, but when he was a lot younger, he had some different allergies. And I was constantly kind of trying to figure out what's bothering him and giving him, the digestive issues, what's going on. And so I was also looking for different proteins because he was not loving protein as much and the textures and all sorts of things. And so thinking, oh, well, yogurt could be great if he would tolerate that. And that would be wonderful. And I kept trying plain yogurt because well, I didn't want to put sugar in it. And it's like, get them to like, and my friends, some of their kids loved plain yogurt. I'm like, what's going on with my kid? Why doesn't he like plain yogurt? So I keep trying to feed him plain yogurt. I'm like, this is silly. So finally, I'm like, okay, Nicole, just put something in it. So, I put a little maple syrup in it. Let's just add it. And he loved it. And I'm like, this is ridiculous. How many months did I stress over the plain yogurt? And we could have added another food that would have given him protein and calcium that he could have enjoyed if I just would have put a little bit of maple syrup in it. And so I think we don't want to go down this road of being so stringent that we're not allowing sugar in and that we're scared of every drop. And at one, I don't think we need to be pouring candy into their systems either, devoid of many other nutrients, right? Where you're only getting...
Yep.
So the difference with that, though, too, is it is dependent on circumstances, because by the time I had my third child and my other two are getting candy and stuff, she was going to have it too, because I didn't want to restrict her and make it feel more off limits. That doesn't mean, again, that I'm feeding her tons of candy, but if it was around and she noticed it, I would give her a bite of something at 1 or 2 years old.
Yep. That's exactly the same experience I had too, is by the time you have your second, the older one is older, and so unless you want to start creating some weird, crazy, well, I don't want to say crazy stuff, but it becomes about limiting for one person and not the other, and they get that, they know that's happening, even at 1 or 2 they pick up on that, and that I think is less healthful than just allowing them to try it when they do.
Absolutely. And a lot of them at that age, it's just give them a little piece, and then if they want a little piece more, they don't, they just need a little bit anyways to experience it. And so if we can just focus again, though, on how do I get more nutrients, well, sometimes that does mean adding a little sugar to something, and that's okay, right? So how do we focus on inclusion? And then as they do start getting older, I think it really, some people are like, well, when do I start just giving it to them? And I have found that if we let it be a very natural process, it is. As COVID's a weird situation, but if we're outside of a pandemic, they're going to gatherings with the family. They're going to their 2-year-old friend's birthday party, the 3-year-old's birthday. And so naturally it just starts showing up at more events, more experiences. Maybe you do keep some cookies in the house that you enjoy. Maybe you bake chocolate chip cookies together. It just kind of naturally starts to come in. And so we just kind of allow it gently. And I think I need to go and say too, as at this age especially, we are in charge of the food. So when I say allow it, it doesn't mean that every time your child says, I want candy, you automatically give it to them.
That's a very important piece, I think. That's really, really important. Can you talk a bit more about that? Because I think, how does that work? Do you create situations for them where you do offer it and then allow them to know when it's coming up? How do you suggest parents do that?
Sure. How familiar is your group of parents in terms of the division of responsibility?
We talk about it. We talk about how we talk about the basics. So we talk about it, but we don't get into the nutritional details. So we talk about allowing our kids to choose their own foods from a variety on the table, to have agency. We talk about with younger kids the importance of setting meal times and that we're in charge of what goes on into those meals. So we get about that as far as that.
Okay, perfect. Because sweets just start to fit right in with the division of responsibility in terms of, as the parent, you are in charge of when you're going to offer that. So you decide that, at this dinner, we are having chocolate chip cookies, or we're having ice cream, or whatever that might be. Or maybe it's for afternoon snack. And just because they want the cookies at dinner, you might say, tonight we're having the spaghetti and broccoli and whatever, and we'll have cookies tomorrow or ice cream tomorrow or whatever it is. So
beautiful.
You're in charge of when that goes out, and you just treat it as you would anything else in terms of the division of responsibility. So
beautiful. And it's important to remember that when when, or let me ask you this as a question rather than making a statement. Is it important to remember that when cookies are available, that they are sort of unlimited in that time? So there's two questions. I can see you nodding your head. You're like, yes. Are there times when it is it's helpful to have any limit, or should that always be unlimited? And what happens if there's a situation where it seems that they can't be satisfied, like 3 packets in and they're still,
Right.
I know there's a lot of questions there, but yeah.
It's a nuanced topic, I will tell you that, because
Yeah.
the division of responsibility, right, is the framework, the approach that Ellen Satter takes.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So her recommendation is that you generally offer 1 serving of sweets with the meal. So if you're having the meal, then it's like 1 brownie or 1 cookie or whatever you deem that kind of 1 portion to be. And her reasoning is, and I do think this makes sense to some degree.
Yep.
And so I always talk to parents and we work through like what's the best approach for their family.
Beautiful.
But her reasoning is that sweets are easy to like, and so especially if you have a selective eater, it becomes more difficult for them to be motivated to try other foods if they always have the unlimited cookies or something that is kind of that really easy to like food.
Yes.
Then they're less likely to go, maybe I want to try the broccoli, or maybe I want to try that other thing over there. So there's that piece of it.
Yep.
With that said, though, she does recommend that you, even if you only offer that 1 sweet per meal regularly, you find opportunities to still offer quote unquote unlimited, so they have the opportunity to self-regulate, to practice eating it, to not feel like it's restricted.
So maybe at an afternoon tea or yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Right. And I also tell parents, unlimited doesn't have to be unlimited forever. You have to keep buying boxes and boxes and boxes. It could be like for me last night, we had a sweet friend bring some Easter stuff for the kids and some cookies. And so I put out a portion of the cookies, and there were still more cookies in the cupboard. But once they were gone, that was just what was available at that meal. It was more than 1 cookie per person. But then I was just thinking, I would like to save these for later in the week. I might want another one another day, right? So I don't want them to go through all of them. So we also have to be really mindful, though, of what our motivation is for it. Are we trying to restrict them? Nope, they can't eat more. That's not good if they have too many cookies. Or is it generally the same that I do with bread sometimes? I might buy a loaf of bread and I want it to go with chili, and I also want it to go with spaghetti later in the week. And so at a certain point, that's just what we have, is that much bread is available. And if you're still hungry, there's these other foods. And so unlimited doesn't have to be that.
I just love that you bring this up, because it's a nuance, isn't it? Between yes, yes, we need to give a lot of agency to our kids to make their own choices about what goes in their mouth from what is available. And we need to be very mindful of it. It is unrealistic to think we can just give them whatever they want for, and sometimes people say, oh, but what is that restricting? Saying, no, we can't have that. And I like to put it in that context of, if your child came home and said, tonight can we have, roast turkey with all the trimmings, and then a pavlova. I don't know if you know about pavlova. It's a very New Zealand dessert, but it's, like this. They want this meal that's going to take you 4 hours to prepare, and you're going to go, no, sorry, we're having spaghetti and
Yes.
And that's not setting limits and restrictions. That's called reality. And when we can get the sugar and cookies into reality, it's not about, oh, that's bad for them, I've got to try and train them out of it. It's just, that's the reality. The way I have a very selective eater who is also on the spectrum, and the idea of 1 cookie at a meal time, or one portion doesn't work very well for this particular child, and they are way more likely to try more food if there's an abundance of the thing that feels comfortable. So I love that you say, I can totally get where Alan Sad is coming from intellectually, and I can see that that would work in many situations. And then what I think I'm hearing you say is you also have to take your own circumstances into into perspective and go, but does this actually work here in this situation? And then there's no one way, is there? Because we're so trained up in this diet culture kind of idea that this is the way. Right. You're either doing it right or you're doing it wrong, and trying to get out of that to there's a whole world of like where you sit within that framework that's very different mentality.
Yeah, I think we have to look at us and how we're going to be in that situation, as well as I always say, put yourself in your kids' shoes for a minute and think of how they might feel in that situation too.
Beautiful.
Like, is that going to feel really restricted to them? Will that feel okay? And, I've had parents that are just so anxious about it because they have been restrictive with sweets. And I say, you know what? Let's start with the one portion. Like, let's make a time where maybe at an afternoon snack once a week, you do offer the platter of cookies or whatever with other food. But that's going to make you so overly anxious if your child eats 5 cookies and nothing else at dinner that I don't think you're going to be giving off a good vibe with that and able to sit with that for right now. So let's just start with not making them so limited by offering them every night with 1 or 2 cookies. Like, let's just start there and get you a little more comfortable, get your kids a little more exposed to them, and then we can work from there,
I just love that you say that, because I think it's one of those things that if we're honest with ourselves, and it is really high anxiety for us around introducing new foods or realizing that we have been in this highly restrictive nature and it's going to take something, it's so helpful to get support with that and have someone kind of walk with us through that process, so that we can hear different ways of doing things, which it's hard to see for ourselves, right, isn't it? And B, deal with our own fear about it. Yeah,
absolutely.
So I love that you say that. And then how do we that's the littles, right? We're sort of talking about under 7 in kind of under 7 or 8, and then as they get older, their need for agency changes, doesn't it? All of a sudden, like, you just being the person who provides the food is not necessarily true anymore. They've got their own money, they've got their they're far more. So how do we handle that going forward?
Yeah, I think it all starts to kind of just evolve. So we look at, like, here's the framework that we're providing, and the littler that they are, the more structure and support that they need around all of that. So we're going to hold that up. We're going to give them, more boundaries with everything, and we're going to hold more structure because we as adults can understand, let's put a meal together. I'm going to have some protein, I'm going to have some grain, I'm going to have some produce. Here, let's put the sweets out, etc. Like, we can understand that. And as kids start to get a little bit older, we've been role modeling that. They see what it means to put a meal together, a snack together. And so slowly that starts to come off a little bit. And again, I see it happen just naturally in terms of, okay, so now maybe, around, 7's even a little, it depends on your child too and how mature they are and what role they take. Like, for instance, my 8-year-old knows, like, we often my kids wake up pretty early, and I often wait a little bit to get breakfast, but they know they can grab a small snack. We've talked about it. Breakfast is going to be soon. These are some snack choices that you can choose first thing in the morning. Then we'll make breakfast around this time. And so around that age, they still have limits. It's not go get what you want, but they can go choose something out of what I've kind of provided for them, and that's fine. And they can be responsible for knowing, okay, breakfast is going to be soon. I know that I'm not supposed to, go eat 3 granola bars right now. It's just something small to get through. So they do that. But then as they get a little bit older, and again, they're getting their own money, they're going with friends more, they're doing these things, there's still expectations around what the family is having, what a family meal is, when that's available. So there's still this idea, right, that we have dinner at 6 p.m. or whatever time is your family's time, and you're expected to come to the table and be with us to have the family meal. And this is what we're having. And so you can choose to eat or not eat or whatever. Some parents at that point start giving them a little more freedom if they want to make an easy sandwich, because I don't love that, especially if there's other kids involved. But sometimes it's like, that they allow that. But I say at that point still, you're expected to come to be at the table and to participate with the family. You can choose to eat or not. And the expectation is that you start managing your snacking and your behaviors so that you're ready to come to the table and be with us, that you're not snacking all the way up until dinner and never eating with the family type of thing. So I think that's just the overall, how the division of responsibility evolves, because what we want to do is by the time they're out of our homes and they're on their own, they can take care of the whole day by themselves. Right?
Yes.
But it slowly just starts to the scaffolding slowly starts to come down, and they take on a little bit more of that.
Yes. So that is beautiful, and that works really beautifully if you've already had division of responsibilities kind of modeled in your, through the ages. How do we deal with, an 11, 12, 13, like young teen? There's been a lot of restriction. All of a sudden, we've lost complete control over, and it looks like all of a sudden, all they want to eat is, candy, or not even necessarily candy, but stuff they've bought from the store, or drinks that they've got access to some money, they're putting it all into that. They don't want to come to, so we are focusing on sugar. So first of all, how do we handle our own emotional reaction to that? And B, can we gently bring them back to nutritional choices, or is there something else we need to do first before we go into, you got to eat your broccoli, you're ruining your health, which is what we want to tell them, right? But that doesn't work. So how would you deal with that situation?
Well, for the first part, bring me back to if I get too off track, because I can talk. So the first part that you talked about was the mindset, managing our own mindset. So I just don't want to go too far on a tangent and forget what else you asked.
Yeah. No. Okay, cool.
So the first part is managing our own mindset. And I think there's a couple things that are really important to remember. One is nutrition is very, very rarely an urgent issue. So allowing our children to kind of go through some of that, they often are fine. They're fine if they have days that are higher candy, less nutrient dense foods. It's not going to affect anything for a day or two. Might they not feel great in their body? Maybe. But that is a learning experience then to get feedback from their body, because their experiences, I'm sure you teach this, are far more important and meaningful than any lecture that we're ever going to give them, right? I could lecture my kids about how bad they're going to feel and how they're ruining their body and how they're unhealthy and all these things. And they're like, tune out, I'm done. My kids would tell me it's just But I want to repeat back what you said, because I think it's such a key beautiful thing to remember. Nutrition is not an urgent issue. I just want to put that on a billboard at my school, like we get this idea that, oh my God, they haven't eaten lunch, and all of a sudden all that parental anxiousness, can arise.
it's beautiful. It's not an urgent issue. It's a long-term issue, isn't it? And those experiences, I keep telling myself this now, it's the experience is the teacher, not me.
Right.
Like I need to step out of here's something you need to learn, to how's that experience going over there for you.
And we
Yeah.
can facilitate that, right? We can check in with them, or
Mm,
even from a young child to be able to come and say, like, my belly hurts, and say, oh, you shouldn't have eaten
mm.
so much. We could say, oh, you ate that candy and your belly hurts. What do you
There's
want
a
to do?
link.
Like,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah, yeah, yeah,
it. So,
yeah.
we can start facilitating that and talking to them about the way their body feels in those moments and what feels good, what might they do different next time,
Yes.
to open that up instead of shaming and lecturing and making them not want to talk about it or shutting down from us.
Yeah.
So I think that's part of the mindset, is really recognizing it's rarely urgent. They need these experiences.
Yes.
And this idea of habituation, which is that the more we're exposed to something, the less desirable it becomes, the less
Mm.
impact it makes on us, whether
Mm.
that's food or something else. But right, when you get something new, it's exciting, and you want to,
Yeah, yeah,
if
yeah,
it's
yeah.
a new car, you want to drive it, whatever it is, it's exciting. The more you have it, the less exciting it becomes. And
Mm.
this is part of that addictive piece too, that people worry, like, oh, but not with this food, it's addictive. But the research shows us that when people are given regular access, even to these high value type of foods, the candy, the chips, the quote unquote processed junk foods that people are scared are addictive,
Mm.
when people are given more access without the shame or judgment, but they're just there to be present and eat them, the desire goes down and they end up eating less over time. So
It's so interesting, isn't it?
it is. It really is, because that blows the addiction thing off too, in terms of
Mm.
recognizing that it's so much more about, again, the energy we bring to it. I'm not saying that you can't feel addictive. I felt addicted to food before
Mm.
because I
Mm.
was restricting it because I thought it was horrible.
Mm.
Feeling
Mm.
addicted is different than a substance actually being addictive,
Yep.
right?
Absolutely.
And with
Yeah.
food, we see the opposite of what we see with drugs, where it builds up that tolerance and you want more and more. With food, we see the more and more you have it in this neutral environment, the desire for it goes down,
That's
actually.
right. That's right. And also um, with an addictive substance, you want more and more purity in it, right? You want,
Mm-hmm.
you see with alcohol, it goes from the beer and wine to the spirits, to, in
Yeah,
really awful circumstances, it's you're drinking,
right.
distilled, you know,
Yes.
alcohol. Whereas that's completely the opposite, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's not like the more sugar you eat, all you want to do is eat a bag of sugar. Like that just doesn't,
right.
that just that's just not where this goes with
Right.
that, is it?
Yeah.
It's yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, that's right. And I think too, I have become more and more aware and of, you talk about without the shame and judgment bit on it. I think that's my biggest job as a parent, having come from this very deep shame about what I'm eating, to continually realize that that's my job, not my children's job,
Right.
to deal with my own
Mm-hmm.
and also to to see that with these, you talk about the experience of it, and to be able to talk to the experience without bringing judgment and shame into it, I have found as a challenge as a parent.
Right.
Like I hear myself like, see, I knew you'd feel,
Yeah.
I knew you'd feel, and to hear that in my head, and to suck those words back in and go,
Yeah.
I can't stop those thoughts coming into my mind,
Sure.
because that's just my history. But to be able to, just put a lock on it
Yes.
and walk away is sometimes just the best best thing we can do,
Absolutely.
isn't it?
Yeah. And just pausing. If you can't say anything in that moment, don't say anything, or like repeat back, just simply repeat back the circumstances that you notice or that
Mm.
they say. Or, I mean, even if it comes to like them asking a question that you don't know, or they're like, "Can I have candy?" and you don't know, you can just say, "Let me pause and think about that for a minute." Like we can always just take that pause before we do the, "No, you've already had enough,"
Yeah.
or,
Yeah.
right?
You've
So
already
it's,
asked me 3 times today. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's
right?
right. I love that. I love that. And to be able to support them in making big mistakes about it, like they felt sick, or they have had an emotional reaction to something that's happened, and instead of feeling the emotion, they've
Right.
gone and and to have, rather than judgment and concern about that, have compassion
Yeah.
and allow them to come to you with it, as opposed to
Right.
feel like they have to, oh, I can't tell mum that I've done that because I'll get the see.
Yeah, exactly, right? If we're creating that kind of shame reaction, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Absolutely.
Look, it's been extraordinary talking to you, Nicole. It's such I could talk to you all week about this,
Right.
because I think it is, I think the thing that has our conversation has highlighted most is that it is about such a variety of different things. It's not like we deal with sugar this way.
Right.
Here's how you do it. And
Yes.
this is the tool. This is the parenting tool that you use for sugar.
Right.
It's it's such a broad, it's dealing with ourselves, it's understanding the science, it's knowing that there are different things that, different journeys will go on. There's diet culture in the background. There's
So much, right?
there is so much. But to get this overview and to get a sense of we can do something differently to the rest of the culture, and not feel like we're just being odd, or you know
Right.
like like we're doing it because the research is there, and because we can see how this plays out in the long run.
Yeah,
Is
absolutely. I think, and I love that you just said there's such a variety, because I think that sums up the nutrition piece of it. That
Yeah.
if we focus on variety and how do we keep providing more variety, and yes, let's offer those nutrient dense foods, if that's our focus instead of how do I get rid of these things, how do
Yeah.
I get these out of here, right?
Mm,
Then we're giving them the opportunity to have this well rounded diet, to take
mm.
in a lot of different nutrients. But when we focus on what we don't want, the energy goes there,
Oh, that's so true.
right?
That's so true. Yeah, and it's that shift in focus from how can we limit, restrict, monitor,
Yeah.
control, to how do we add in and demonstrate
Yeah.
this relationship over here. I
Yeah.
love that. But before we go, because our time is almost up, before we go, um, can you please tell us how we can get in contact with you, how we can work with you if we want to, how, everything from joining your beautiful Facebook group,
Yeah.
which is a free group, right?
It is. Yep.
To working with you and how that works.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for asking.
You're
I would
very welcome.
love to have anyone who is on this journey and who does align with this approach to join the free Facebook group. It's called Joyful Eating for Your Family, and it is based on creating more joy and less stress. And
Mm,
it's in line with this division of responsibility and raising intuitive eaters to have a healthy relationship with food and their
yep.
bodies. So that's a free Facebook group. You can just look up Joyful Eating for Your Family on Facebook. You can also follow me on Instagram at Nicole Cruz RD. I'm pretty present there as well. Uh, and and to work with me more directly, you can always just reach out to me through those mediums, or you can go on my website, which is NicoleCruzRD.com, and you can find the link to schedule a free call with me so we can chat about what might be the best way for us to get to work together and get you whatever support it is that you might need, and helping to feed your family in a way that feels good both to you and to your kids. So
beautiful. And all the links to those things, the Facebook group, your Instagram, and your website, are all down below this interview, so you're very easy to find. And thank you so much, Nicole, for sharing your wisdom with us and for being here. It's actually the day that we're recording this is Easter Friday in New Zealand. So I know it's not quite Easter Friday where you are. It's the day before Easter Friday, but it's such a beautiful day to be talking about sugar and kids with Easter coming up.
All the holiday things.
All the holiday things. So I really hope this can, calm down some anxiety about that and set you on a path of far more joyful, as you say, eating and family times. So thank you, Nicole.
Of course, thank you. I love that I get to share some of this information and talk about it, and hope that we can continue with the next generation to raise them to have a little healthier relationship with food. And I was just thinking, as you said that too, I do have a couple of free guides as well specific to sugar. So I just wanted, if you go to my website, you'll find it under the resources, because I do talk about dealing with holiday candy and that sort of thing. So definitely if the holidays and just certain situations are also challenging, I have some free info there too. So
fantastic. We will also put a link. Can we put a link to those resources directly from let's do that. Absolutely. Fantastic. Cool. Thank you so much.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
All right, Nicole. So I will end the interview there. And thank you. So delightful.